Military dogs are four-legged heroes that serve your country, whichever country you live in, with loyalty and bravery. But what happens to them once they retire from service? Well, I spoke to Bob Bryant from Mission Canine Rescue, who gifted us this fascinating journey into the world of working dogs and the amazing organisation dedicated to their rescue and rehabilitation. Bob, welcome along to the show. I'm really excited to be bringing possibly a brand new topic to the audience today. So welcome along.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
And we're talking all about Mission Canine and military dogs and their rescue and rehabilitation and rehoming. But before we dive into military dogs and why that's something that is a really valuable service that you guys are offering, what brought you into this work? Because you're not from a military background and came at this from quite a different angle.
From a business standpoint, I met my current partners through collaboration with an organization similar to Mission Canine that liked an offer I made to them. They agreed to present it to their audience. The audience responded well, and we did great. When it came time to do some advertising to grow, the executive director of that organization refused to, and 60 days later, she had to get a real job, quote unquote. And from there, my partners contacted me and said, "We don't want to lose this great work. Will you help us co-found it?" And since then, I've been their director of development. I mean, it's a glorified title. I'm king of nothing, but I'm able to successfully raise about $1,700,000 a year to support our work. So it's been beneficial. And I do put my hands on a few dogs from time to time.
There's got to be some perks for the job as well as all the amazing
Yes.
stories that you'll come across. Yeah.
Correct.
So military dogs, Bob, what kind of work do they do, and what kind of dogs are we talking about? Is there quite a spectrum, or is it quite a narrow field that they are employed in?
It's fairly narrow. Let's pair military dogs also with their compatriots, the contract working dog. They do the exact same job as military dogs. They're just owned by private companies, and we work equally with both military and contract working dogs. The primary military working dog you'll see in use either in the contractor world or the military world is the Belgian Malinois. They are lighter than German Shepherds. They're faster. I think they have a little bit more bite strength, and they're less prone to hip dysplasia due to their weight. We call them the Velociraptor of the German Shepherd family, and they're borderline insane. Second most common is going to be the German Shepherd. However, they're falling, I won't say out of favor, but they tend to have more hip-related issues. They have more heat-related issues, and they're not as resilient as a Malinois. Some other dogs we see in the working world, we see German short-haired pointers, we see Springer Spaniels, we see Labrador Retrievers, even see a Jack Russell Terrier. What do you think of Jack Russell Terrier searches?
Oh, searches for little nooks and crannies for hidden bombs. I don't know.
Yeah, nooks and crannies, or maybe drugs. Where could there
Yeah.
be lots of little nooks and crannies?
Well, in buildings and
How
debris
about
and.
how about submarines? That's where they search.
Okay, yeah. Well, my dad was a submariner, so I maybe should have known that.
There we go. Yeah, they have some jacks that are trained for explosives and drugs, and when the drug jack comes on, the sailors get nervous. So hopefully nobody has anything they're not supposed to. That's about the extent of the working breeds we see. Normally, we only see the Springer Spaniel, the German Short-haired Pointers, and the other smaller dogs. We see them primarily in TSA service, Transportation Security Administration, the airport police. We see a lot of Labrador Retrievers still serving for the military. Normally, they're single-purpose explosion detection dogs, they're explosive detection dogs, sorry. And the Malinois and the Shepherds, they are dual-purpose. They're trained for patrol, apprehension, and also for either drug or explosive search.
Okay, so they're working in some pretty hostile areas, and I imagine it takes quite a lot to train these dogs and to bring them into service as well.
It's about a 1-year process from start to finish. When they're puppies, the military dogs themselves, they're given to early in life trainers. It's called the puppy program down at Lackland Air Force Base. And these dogs they have some preconditioning, and I believe when they're 6 or 7 months old, then they go into the regular training school, which is at the Lackland Joint Task Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. And then from there, they're deployed to the branches of the service that need them.
Okay, wonderful. And so they've then carried out their service. They've done well. Presumably, most of them go on to do well because otherwise they wouldn't make the cut. I imagine most people would then think that there is some program that they then go into to have a happy retirement where they, live the life of Riley. That's not the case.
No, unfortunately not. In fact, it's kind of I don't know. I kind of get angry when I think about it. These dogs, especially military dogs, they didn't ask to serve. They were basically drafted. Uh, they have no choice. They live in kennels. They're fed whatever the military wants to feed them, which is pretty good. They do get vet care. But the military's idea of retirement now is, hey, let's give the dog a medal for their service. No, let's give the dog lifetime vet care and nutrition. Good grief. He served our country for 8 to 10 years, and you want to give him a medal and pawn him off on an adopter to go broke paying for medical expenses, food, what have you. These dogs can have a number. You're veterinarians, is correct, sir?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
We see a lot of cancer in retired working dogs, especially the worst one, in my opinion, hemangiosarcoma. Yeah. Absolutely nasty blood cancer. It can get, for your audience that doesn't know, we had a female German Shepherd named Nora that had it, and they took her spleen out. They discovered it. She was fine, and then there was also a growth of it on her intestines, burst one day, and bled out. Nothing we could do about it. She died on the way to the vet. But it's horrible disease, and it's because of the compounds that they've been exposed to. Also, even some of the bleaches that are used to clean their kennel environments. I wish that the military would be a little bit more serious about protection, and contract dogs be a little bit more serious about their environment, their training, and what they're inhaling, because these substances mess them up. You've probably seen similar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we've all heard about it from the Gulf War and all of these yes, things, sir. That the human soldiers who are exposed to that having equal troubles, as well as that medical
Correct.
problem. I assume that there's quite a lot of injuries and hang-ups from that, thinking cruciates and arthritis and all of those long.
Yeah, cruciate surgeries, hip dysplasia, pannus. Eye problems of pannus, especially related from sun exposure. Also from the bleach that they're using to clean cement. Some of the dogs just have a red sclera in their eye, and you can treat it, but you can't cure it.
Yeah. So these dogs, so they've served their country. They've done a wonderful, valuable job, and they're kind of kicked to the curb effectively. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Well, when they're done with them, they're done with them. The military dogs either go to their former handlers, or if they don't have a handler, they're then adopted to the public. But the military has gotten to the point they know us well enough that when they have a dog that doesn't have a handler, we had one yesterday down in Florida. The dog had a couple of apprehension bites, and one mistake bite on the handler, but there was no handler that could take it because they all had little kids. Yeah. So we take the situation and we determine whether we can accept the dog. If it's a dog that can be adopted, we'll accept it, but we're not a hospice. We don't keep them forever.
Yeah. So what's that process? Where does Mission Canine Rescue fit in with all this, Bob? They give you a call and you get them to where they need to go. You connect them with people. What work is it that you are doing that's saving
several instances? Military handlers, when they find that their retired working dog has been deemed as excess equipment. Equipment doesn't bleed. It's funny how that works. When they've been determined as excess, we'll call their kennel master. We'll find where the dog is. The military back in 2016 was forced by the National Defense Authorization Act revision that was signed by President Obama to bring dogs to United States soil when they were retired overseas. The military got around it by calling foreign operating bases United States soil. And up until 2022, we hadn't seen any assistance, but we had one good stroke of luck. They brought 3 dogs on a rotator flight with troops from Japan to Seattle, Washington. We had to get the dogs all the way across the country from there, but at least we didn't have to pay $5,000 a dog to transport it from Japan. No corporal has that kind of money. Sure. They just don't. Contract dog companies will often call us when their dogs are tired. They're good contractors, and there's horrible contractors. There's more horrible ones than good ones. These are the ones that feed the dogs half rations, They don't give them vet care. They never see the light of day. They don't get any exercise. We received Dutch Shepherds that weighed 35 pounds that should have weighed 70.
Yeah.
And obviously, they become neurotic. They have mental issues, and there's just a lot more rehab work that's involved. And the contractors see us as a way to keep them from being damned by the public. But as a result, we're pushing our public to contact both military and contractors via their government officials and say, hey, you don't send a dog overseas unless you're going to guarantee us that the dog's going to come home in 8 years, that they're going to get lifetime vet care and nutrition. It's only fair. And if enough people raise hell about that, it might actually happen. The best day of my life will be when we're no longer needed. I'd love to not have to do this work anymore. But until we are not needed, we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, and I suspect it will be for a long time, unfortunately. You mentioned there, Bob, about, and you mentioned there, Bob, about kind of the dogs being kind of quite neurotic or having issues. I mean, I imagine working in that kind of environment and doing the work that they're doing, much like with people, a lot of them do suffer with post-traumatic stress disorder or other neurosis. So what kind of problems are you seeing from that point of view? And then what rehabilitation are they needed so that they can then become pets?
The worst situations we see come from the contract dog world. These dogs are often handled by foreign nationals who don't like dogs to begin with. For instance, I had a Belgian Malinois. His name was Anubis. He came from a contractor in Kuwait. When a working dog doesn't release its toy after it's given it as a reward, it doesn't work anymore. So if it won't release with the command out, they'll beat the dog or they'll choke it out. And that's what they did to him. He was absolutely terrified of men. He urinated, he soiled himself the first time he saw me. And my wife took him in, and he bonded like a tick to her. In fact, he had so egregious separation anxiety that I bought a mannequin. I dressed it in her dirty clothes, put a wig on it, laid it on the couch, and put a blanket up to the head, and that dog bought it. He would sit there with that dummy, and she could actually go out and have a life for a while. So we see a lot of separation anxiety from the dogs. We see a lot of injuries from dogs that are jumping different places, especially Malinois. We see a lot of cruciate tears. We see a lot of feet issues. And again, with explosive dogs, the big cancer. You know, it's always present. We see it less. We see less injuries in the military dog segment than we do in the contract dog world. But they both have a lot of situations. It takes a minimum of a month to do an evaluation on the best dog, and we've had some 6 months. And people ask us, well, how do you correct the PTSD? The answer is you don't. You just find out what triggers it, and you learn how to avoid the triggers that get the dog into that mode.
Yeah. It's something that's with them for life, and you just have to accept it's part of them and then manage that situation.
Correct. Most military dogs, when we get them, they are returned to their handler without any time in our facility because the handler knows the dog far better than we do. And we just make sure that they have the available resources to take care of their dog.
Yeah, I love that. So I guess, you know, that must be an incredibly close bond when you have worked in those environments with your dog. The bond that gets formed, it must be really intense. So I guess do they always connect, you know, really well afterwards? Because as I understand it, dogs can have multiple, or often do have multiple handlers in their working lifetime.
Five.
Yeah,
they can have 5 handlers, and in the end, the military decides what handler gets the dog.
Okay.
Normally, it's the last handler. Sometimes it's not, but generally, if they're interested, the other handlers will work with the handler to come and visit, and what have you, so they can see their dog as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and that, I imagine, can be a really great boost to that handler as well, because they will not always be in the military, and they may be struggling as well. Yeah,
it changes their life. I've seen dogs be called by their handler at airports and have the dog run shrieking to the handler, and jump in their arms. It's a very, very beautiful thing to behold.
Yeah. And people who have left the military for one reason. I know on your website there's some wonderful videos there that show the stories of a few different dogs, but it shows one lady who was struggling after leaving the military and having this dog brought back into her life, and it seemed to kind
Was
of really
this was
transform her.
this was this Zoltan?
It was, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Zoltan and Angela Neal. That was a great reunion. We were
Yeah.
the American AARP, American Association for Retired Persons. They produced that video on YouTube. It's gotten hundreds of thousands of views, and we've had a lot of good response from it. It's a great one.
Yeah.
And do you know that that dog has learned how to paddleboard? He now paddleboards.
Well, I guess they must be clever dogs to, to be in that profession in the first place. And, shepherds and all of the rest are, yeah, they're very switched on. So,
Oh, my shepherd offers me drugs on a regular basis at our local parks. He'll go over to a bush. Next thing I'll see this tail wagging, and up he'll come with something. 2 days ago, it was a crack pipe. I'm like, put it up, maybe. Throw it away. But he
yeah,
always finds things. I had a bomb dog named Oreo back from 2013 to 2018, and Oreo he'd find firecrackers, he'd find blasting caps. They never quit working. But he also learned to find lacrosse balls, and even when they were buried, he found over 500 in the period that he was alive while I had him.
yeah,
He was
yeah.
absolutely overjoyed every time he'd find one.
He's probably earning his keep with getting those back to the lacrosse team then.
Exactly.
um, with regards how people can get involved, if you've mentioned that lobbying, maybe talking to their representative about the state of these dogs and the fact that they can potentially be abandoned, but how can people get involved if this really kind of touches a nerve? And I imagine it will, because especially in the States, the service mentality is huge, so I think people will be quite surprised
Now
to.
you are in the UK, is that correct?
So I was
Or no?
originally in the UK. I'm in New Zealand now.
All right. If you know anybody in the UK, I want you to recommend an organization to them that they should support, and that is heropaws.uk.org. They work specifically with British Royal Army dogs. We've actually taken a few from them. They're wonderful people, and they need help as well. The biggest way you can help Mission Canine is with your financial donation. We put 93 cents out of every dollar to the work. We really are no profit. And there's sometimes, due to the volume of work the public asks us to do, that we're running barely with our nose above the surface of the water. We do like people to lobby their elected representatives to talk about the treatment the dogs received. Many times our supporters will tweet about our work, or they'll post about our work. We get support from that. In most cases, we don't use a lot of volunteers for transport just because of the nature of the dogs.
Sure,
We want
yeah.
people that are handlers, so that there's no whoops, the dog bit me.
Yeah.
If we send a dog that's prone to bite, we want somebody that's able to handle a bite trained dog.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that's a really important point, because a lot of rescue organizations will ask for people to ship dogs across the country, but personal safety has got to be at the forefront.
Correct.
Yeah,
I've seen some horror stories from inexperienced people moving dogs that have the propensity for harm.
yeah, for sure. And I think, well, that's a completely separate topic, but there's a lot of our dogs, and I imagine it's the same with military dogs as well, but they will show a lot of behaviors before they get to that bite stage if they're feeling uncomfortable. But
True.
if you're not used to seeing those, then they often get misinterpreted. I cringe every time you see a baby cuddling a dog on social media who's in inverted commas smiling, but
Yeah.
that's actually showing their
Doing
teeth.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
showing their teeth, saying,
I'm
I'm
like,
going to use these if you don't back off. But yeah, no, that's
well,
wonderful.
I had one guy got nailed. He grabbed a dog by the cheeks. The dog
Yeah,
bit him, and I just looked at him. I said, "How stupid are you? You don't do that."
yeah,
I was
yeah.
not his most popular person after that point, but I don't care.
Yeah, no, but that's why, financial support is most needed, and all of those details can be found on your website, I presume.
Two places. Our website is missionk9rescue.org. That's a letter K and a number 9. Our Facebook work is on Mission Canine, also on Instagram. And most of our fresh current work you can find on Facebook. I try to be pretty steady in blogging on our site. However, time, business gets in the way, and sometimes it's not as active, but Facebook is always fresh.
Wonderful. Fantastic, Bob. And all those links will be in the show notes or description of wherever you're
Thank you.
watching or listening to this. So, Bob, it's been a fascinating conversation. It's certainly one, before I got the email through, it wasn't a topic that I was familiar with. So it's been wonderful to learn more about this. And I'd absolutely agree with everything that you've said and how important this work is, because these dogs, they haven't chosen to be in the situation that they find themselves in. They've performed such a valuable service. It's really up to us as the people to kind of correct this wrong and make sure they do live a happy, healthy, and pain-free or illness-free as much as possible retirement.
You know, you islanders must take pretty good care of your dogs, because we've never gotten a dog from New Zealand. So I think they must be in good hands down there.
I'd like to think so. I have no idea, if I'm honest, Bob, but yeah, I would like to think so. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Bob, and yeah, all the best for the future.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you having me on.
But while PTSD can't be cured, there are some amazing new developments that just might make all the difference to these dogs. They're also being trialled on people as well, and you can find out all about them in this video linked on screen. So tap on that video. I'll see you over there. But until then, I'm veterinarian Dr. Alex. This is Our Pets Health, because they're family.